A woman crawls through a gap barely big enough for her body. Her leg was bleeding, her breath shaking. Behind her, something huge slams against a door, again and again, trying to break through. She doesn't know this place. She doesn't know if there's a way out. All she knows is that if that door gives way, she's not walking out of here alive. So how did a therapist end up trapped in a nightmare that isn't supposed to exist? Let's go back to where it all started. Back in 1990, the Async Institute sent a researcher named Naren into a strange, endless place with a camera. Naren filmed everything as he moved through room after room of nothing but yellow walls and floors. Eventually, he spotted some cables on the ground. He followed them to a tripod and a stack of boxes, and behind that, a room packed with equipment. He pushed the boxes against the entrance to block it off, then grabbed a radio and told headquarters this was the furthest he'd ever gone, but he'd lost his team, and something else was in there with him. He begged for a rescue. A strange noise cut him off, and a bird slammed into the wall right next to him. When he tried to check on it, it flew off. Naren kept moving, finding more objects now instead of empty rooms, half-built furniture stuck straight into the walls. Then he heard a door open behind him, and he turned around to face a monster. He ran into a room decorated like a tropical island and grabbed the door, but it wouldn't budge. The creature caught up to him and knocked him flat. Back at the institute, a room full of scientists watched the whole thing happen on a screen. Weeks later, a therapist named Mary stood outside her childhood home, watching it get torn down. The handprints she and her mother once pressed into the front walkway were the only thing she managed to save. Across town, a man named Clark opened up his struggling furniture store for another slow day. That evening, he had a therapy session with Mary, where he wondered out loud if he even deserved to be with anyone. Mary set up a role-play exercise, playing the part of his wife, the same wife who'd kicked him out after one more fight about his drinking. His wife resented him for always being at the store. Clark resented her right back for taking a break from college while he paid every bill alone. When Mary brought up his failed career as an architect, Clark snapped and yelled at her. She ended the exercise calmly, telling him that reaction was normal and that this was exactly the kind of feeling they needed to work through together. Sometime after that, Clark dressed up as a pirate to film a commercial for a big store sale, and the chair he sat on snapped a leg, sending him straight to the floor. His assistant manager Kat and her boyfriend Bobby wanted another take. Clark waved them off for the day. Later, an electrician came by to check the store's power, which had been flickering and cutting out for months, while the bill somehow kept climbing. Down in the basement fuse box, they found 3 red switches Clark swore had never been there before. Flipping them did nothing. That night, Mary sat at home watching TV, forced to sit through an ad for her own therapy tapes, glancing every so often at the cement handprint she'd taken from her old house. At the same time, Clark drank alone in the store where he now lived, and his TV shut off with no explanation. Moments later, the store's lights flicked on by themselves before dying out again. Restless and alone, Clark drove out to stare at his old house while playing one of Mary's tapes in the car. Not long after, Mary hosted a family gathering, still unable to process her mother's death, and the anxiety hit her hard enough that she slipped away to take medication she kept hidden in her office. The next night, Clark was drinking in front of the TV again when a rival store's commercial set him off, and right as his anger peaked, the screen glitched and flashed an image of endless yellow rooms before shutting off completely. He smacked the TV in frustration, then noticed the basement lights flickering below him. He went down and started flipping every switch off, and nothing changed until he hit the 3 red ones, which killed the power to the entire building. Pressing them again brought nothing back. Ready to give up and leave, Clark froze. A glowing line had appeared on the wall in front of him. He stepped closer, and it vanished. When he touched the wall anyway, his whole body passed straight through it, and he landed hard on a yellow floor. Now standing in the back rooms, a confused Clark stared at a pile of furniture. He touched the wall behind him and got thrown right back into his basement. Curiosity got the better of him, so he crossed over again, recognizing the furniture from his own store. He started exploring, hitting nothing but empty rooms until he came across a stop sign written in mirrored letters. He avoided it and took another hallway instead, where he spotted the same bird from the very beginning, dead on the floor. Further in, he found a cluster of chairs and heard a voice speaking in several languages at once. Following it led him to a cutout figure with a recorder strapped to its back. The cables running from it led to a locked door. On his way back, Clark noticed a loose panel in the wall, pulled it free, and found a bag stuffed with tapes, discs, and an ID card belonging to Naren. Behind the panel was a tunnel. Clark crawled through it into a room where objects were slowly sinking into the floor, chairs disappearing into a hole one by one. A strange noise made him call out through the tunnel to the room he'd just left. The recording stopped, and the cutout was hurled into the room in broken pieces. Spooked, Clark backed away and found a small door with 3 knobs, all of which he had to test before it finally opened. He barely fit through the frame, and once inside the next room, he felt something following him. So he shut the door fast. Spotting the stop sign again, he retraced his steps back to the furniture pile. This time the exit wall wouldn't let him through, and panic set in. But after several tries, he finally broke through, grabbing a stool on his way out as proof this had actually happened. Back at the institute, a researcher named Phil sat watching footage of everything Clark had just done. At his next session, Clark told Mary he hadn't had a drink in 3 days and tried desperately to explain what happened, even pulling out a hand-drawn map of the rooms. Mary assumed it was withdrawal talking and didn't believe a word of it. Clark grabbed the map back and swore he'd prove it to her. He went to Kat and Bobby next, offering to pay them if they'd help him with something. The following day, he brought them down to the basement and had Bobby film the whole thing. After packing a bag of supplies and marking the wall, Clark crossed through, leaving the two of them stunned. They could hear his voice from the other side, telling them to follow. Kat refused, calling it too dangerous, but Bobby's curiosity won out, and once he saw the rooms for himself, he talked Kat into joining too. The three of them explored together, Bobby filming every corner, until they found a dark, narrow tunnel. Clark tied a rope around Bobby and lowered him down into it. The passage kept getting tighter as Bobby crawled deeper, eventually reaching a room piled with dirty laundry and a smell that made him gag. Next door, he spotted flickering lights, but couldn't reach it since his rope ran out. Then a monster appeared in that other room, and Bobby scrambled back up the tunnel, screaming for his friends to pull him out. Once they got him up, he barely had time to describe what he saw before the rope yanked hard, dragging him straight back down. Kat grabbed onto him while Clark fought with the knot, but the rope kept pulling with terrifying strength, and Bobby disappeared into the tunnel with it. Clark and Kat could hear monstrous noises and Bobby's screams echoing up from below, right before the rope slammed a bed frame into them and dragged all three of them, camera included, down the tunnel. They watched in horror as Bobby vanished through a hatch, leaving a trail of blood behind. Kat bolted into the dark room after him, and Clark heard her scream just before the hatch swung open again. Sensing the creature returning, Clark squeezed through a hole in the wall and fled through piles of trash until he broke into a new section, this one white instead of yellow. Hearing noises behind him, he opened a door and ended up back in the yellow laundry room. He called out for Kat while passing a room full of sinking couches and a crutch, then a corridor lined with children's toys, then a string of empty rooms. Bursting through the next door, Clark found a room decorated for Christmas, complete with a lit tree and mannequins slowly sinking into the floor. Behind the tree sat a man in a chair. Clark said hello, and the man turned on a lamp, revealing he was missing half his body. A deformed woman appeared next and came straight for Clark, forcing him to run again. He passed more holiday decorations before stumbling into a bathroom, slipping on wet tile, then finding a set of pools. That's when he heard Kat's voice through a wall. He set down the camera to try and reach her, and something grabbed it from the other side. A flashback showed Mary as a little girl. Her mother struggled with severe mental illness, kept the house filthy, and covered every window with newspaper. Young Mary once tried to open a window, and her mother caught her instantly, scolding her, warning her it wasn't safe to go outside. Adult Mary jolted awake from the memory right as a door somewhere blew open. She stared at the cement handprint on her desk until her phone rang. She let it go to voicemail. It was Clark, saying he was never coming back. Meanwhile, Phil sat watching TV with his family when Clark's old pirate commercial played during the break, and Phil froze, recognizing him instantly. Not long after, Mary showed up at the empty furniture store, a pile of unopened mail sitting under the door. She called out for Clark and got no answer. Noticing the basement lights flickering, she went down and found his hand-drawn map, then the marks on the wall, then watched, stunned, as a fly vanished straight into it. After hesitating, she finally worked up the nerve to touch the wall and cross over herself. Inside the back rooms, Mary didn't find furniture waiting for her, just empty rooms and that same mirrored stop sign. She searched further and eventually stumbled onto pieces of her own childhood home. In the next section, she found a pile of chairs and a disturbing drawing on the wall depicting a monster killing people, along with notes from someone clearly trying to map this place out. A noise made her spin around, and she caught someone hiding in a passage. It was Clark, telling her to keep quiet before stepping into view and explaining that this place was built from every location that ever existed. Their conversation got cut off by flickering lights, and Clark told her not to worry, it was just him. Then he wrapped his arm around her throat and started choking her, apologizing the whole time, insisting it was for her own good. Another flashback showed young Mary watching her mother get taken away to a mental hospital, leaving her completely alone in that house. The memory itself started warping, objects and details dissolving piece by piece until the house became just another room in the back rooms. Mary woke up tied to a chair in a strange dining room, watching Clark set the table while three warped human-shaped figures stood nearby. He told her this was messy, but kind of beautiful, and explained that everything in this place gets built out of visitors' memories. The more it gets rebuilt, the more twisted it becomes. Clark believed these distorted people were actually an improvement since they couldn't feel pain, and he proved it by stabbing one of them without any reaction. He said existing without fear or regret sounded incredible, then began pulling stuffing out of the man's stomach instead of flesh, plating the pieces like food. He opened the fridge next, revealing Kat's severed head inside. Mary begged him to let her go, promising to help with anything he needed. But Clark wanted something else first. He wanted her to admit he'd been right all along. And to do that, he restaged their old roleplay exercise. When he cut the lights, the man in the chair flicked his lamp back on. Clark took his knife back and sliced off the deformed woman's hair, placing it on Mary's head like a wig so she could play his wife. He replayed the night he got kicked out, apologizing at first for waking her up, calm and reasonable, until he spiraled into a rant about having the right to drink in his own house, since he paid for everything. just like he'd paid for her college. Mary ripped the wig off and yelled that she wasn't his wife. Refusing to stay in character, she told him the truth. His wife hadn't left because of the drinking or the long hours at the store. She left because Clark never once took responsibility for anything, always finding someone else to blame. And Mary couldn't fix that for him. Clark broke down crying, admitting he didn't want to change at all. He wanted to stay here, in this place, forever. Mary told him he could stay if that's what he truly wanted. But he had to let her go first. He untied her and apologized, and the two twisted women bolted into a corner panicking. That's when the real threat showed up. The creature emerged from the shadows wearing the form of Captain Clark, the pirate from the commercial, a living manifestation of every buried rage and failure Clark had inside him. Clark tried to reason with it, saying Mary was a friend and that neither of them needed to change anymore. The captain grabbed him instead, biting into his shoulder and hurling him around the room like a rag doll, while the lamp man kept flicking his light on and off, entertained. As Clark screamed somewhere behind her, Mary ran into a room shaped like her old neighborhood and sprinted for a door at the end. It wouldn't open. Captain Clark appeared then, dragging Clark's bloodied body across the floor, and Mary ducked into a nearby house to hide. Moving room to room, she could hear the creature closing in behind her. In a space filled with couches, she had to leap across them to keep moving, slipped and hurt her leg badly. Slower now, she barely reached a corridor and hopped her way to another door, which also refused to open. With the creature nearly on top of her, Mary dropped and crawled through a small dog door just in time to dodge its reaching hand. On the other side, Mary found herself standing at the edge of a massive open atrium, the entire backrooms stretching out below her. The creature pounded on the door behind her, trying to break through, so she moved as fast as she safely could, crawling up a staircase and prying open a hatch in the ceiling that fell away into the dark below. Climbing through it dropped her into a nicer room filled with her store's furniture. More stairs led to an open floor that made her realize this whole area was a broken, distorted copy of Clark's store. She ran for the exit only to find it blocked. Captain Clark caught up right then, so Mary grabbed a coat rack and smashed his wooden leg, knocking him down. She turned to run again but crashed into the recorder cutout, setting off an alarm that flooded the room with fog from ceiling extinguishers. She kept moving, but the fog turned out to be sleeping gas, and she collapsed before she could get clear. Something jolted her back awake, and she opened her eyes to find Captain Clark crawling on top of her. She shoved one hand against his face while the other dug the cement handprint out of her pocket, then bashed it against his head over and over until it finally broke apart. Mary scrambled into a passage in the wall too narrow for the creature to follow, ran for the next door, and got knocked out by Async workers in hazmat suits waiting on the other side. Her last glimpse was the empty passage behind her before everything went black. The team dragged her out and brought her before a group of scientists back at the institute. She was scanned and led through the facility, where she learned they'd recovered the creature's body, along with a whole room full of duplicate recorder cutouts. Eventually, she was left alone with Phil, who peppered her with questions. Mary confirmed she'd found the rooms through the furniture store, but shut down completely when he showed her a screenshot of the footage with Clark and the blurred-out monster. Phil explained his company used to manufacture MRI machines before they stumbled onto the back rooms, and now his entire job was mapping the place out. He wanted her full story. Mary just stared past him and stopped responding. The facility held rooms full of evidence from everything that happened. Mary's own therapy tapes stacked on a shelf, missing person posters for Kat and Bobby taped to a wall. Then the story reveals its final twist. Mary never actually left. She's still sitting frozen in that chair back in the back rooms, her body slowly changing into something else entirely. If you enjoyed this, smash that like button and subscribe for more.